Hi everyone, that's our second video on this series when we talk about Multicluster Service Mesh. I'm Donijano, Director of Field Engineering at Solo.io. Like we started to discuss last time, there are multiple challenges when you want to deploy service mesh across multiple clusters. We already covered this need for federated trust and identity, and this time we'll cover how you allow communication between clusters, how you can have microservices running on one cluster talking to microservices running on the other cluster. And we will cover other challenges in the next topics, like how you can manage access control globally, disaster recovery strategy, but everything here is complex, so we'll do one by one. So on this multi-cluster, we will focus on Istio first, and we discussed last time that the shared control plane is not what is generally used, and people tend to use more the replicated control plane because you don't need a flat network. And here we already discussed about this unique identity, but now let's discuss about how we can have one pod from one side talking to a pod on the other side using the Istio ingress gateway. To make that happen, you need to create many objects, like you will see, like you need to create manually a service entry on the first cluster for each service on the second cluster you want to be able to reach. And we'll use the famous bookinfo demo to highlight that, and we will just want the product page on the first cluster to be able to send traffic to both V1 and V2 of the reviews microservice on first site and V3 on the second site. To make it happen, you need to create a lot of things. Like, we will go through more details, but you need a virtual service where you define where you send the traffic. Then you need like a destination rule. Then you need to create service entry to let Istio knows how to reach the service on the second cluster, and also on the second cluster you need to create like multiple objects so that everything is routed correctly, and we will show you that in the details when we go through the demo. So the service mesh hub, we talked about it last time, we introduced it, so it's aimed not to support only Istio but multiple service mesh technologies. App mesh is just around the corner, coming very soon, and others after. And the service mesh hub makes your life easier when you have multiple service mesh clusters. Doing like the discovery of these multiple services, so it creates the service entries for you automatically, managing access control, and simplifying the way you can manage the multi-cluster traffic, like we will show you in the demo. So here, we have like the same environment we used last time. So 3 Kubernetes cluster, one where you have service mesh hub deployed, it's kind 1, and then we have kind 2 and kind 3 where we have like Istio running. So last time we went through deploying service mesh hub and registering the other clusters, and then we deployed Istio clusters using the operator, so very standard deployment. Then we deployed like the bookinfo demo application on both sides, but as you can see on the second site, on kind 3, we have the 3 version of the reviews microservices, while on the first one we have only 1. We did this unification of identity, and that's very important because we could not do the part we do today if we would not have done that. So now we can simply create our rule, explaining the way we want the traffic to be routed. So as you can see, we just say we want to send like 75% of the request coming from the product page to the review v3 on the kind3, so on the second cluster, and the remaining requests we want to send them to the local cluster on the v1 and v2. So we are just going to execute this request. And that's the only thing we will have to do basically. All the complexity I described before, everything will be done by the Service Mesh hub. So we just apply that and we go to our environment where we can access the product page, and we just need to know which IP. So let's look at the IP of the Istio Ingress Gateway service on kind 2. So it's here 172.18.0.220. Just need to go to this page, and we see that we have the red star, so it's the version 3 is the red star. So the version 3 is not running in this cluster, but you see that we are able to reach that service that is on the other cluster, and we see that most of the requests are going there. Every time we refresh, like 75% of the time we get that one. We can also look at the one on kind 3, and we have the 3 services running there. So there is no traffic rule for it, so that should just be like a random routing. So we see here we get each of the service. There is no a lot less the v3 as we expect. So everything is working well, and as you've seen, we just created one object to describe what we wanted to do, and everything has been automated by the Service Mesh hub for us. So if you look at these objects, so we can go through that in a little bit more details. So we have this virtual service here that describe where we want to route the request, and then the corresponding destination rules and service entries. So we can start by looking at this virtual service. You see the ones called reviews, and you see here that there are these subsets, and we see the 3 of them, and we just need to look now at the destination rules and find the destination rule that correspond to this host. So we see the host finished by kind3.global because it's correspond to workload running on another cluster. So we can just look at this destination rule that define the subset, and generally define the subset with the labels of the local service, but when you have a global rule, you have this special cluster label, and basically you see cluster kind3 label. So it will be used to select the right service entry, and the service entry will be corresponding also to the same host and have this label. So let's find it. So again, just looking at the host to find the service entry, and if we look at this object, we should be able to see the label, and yeah, the label, and you see as well the IP of the Istio Ingress Gateway on the second site, which is kind3, and we see the corresponding host, and the address has been automatically selected by Service Mesh hub because it has to be unique for each service entry. Now on the second site, the request comes, and we have this envoy filter first. So we can go to the kind3 cluster, and we can take a look at the envoy filters, and there is one that's called Virtual Mesh Service Mesh Hub. That's the one that is interesting. So let's have a look at that one. and you see here the rule at the end. Basically, we replace the suffix kind3.global by cluster.local, so that when this is done, the rest of the routing is done like if it would be a local request coming from the product page. So we will have like the destination rule, the local destination rule that define the subset that we are trying to reach. So we can take a look at the local destination rules. This time we will not use the global one, we will use the local one, but note that the global ones are already there, already created by the Service Mesh hub, ready to use. So we could configure a traffic policy from this cluster to the first one very easily as well. So now let's just have a look at this reviews destination rule, and we can see then how the subset are defined. And you see they are defined with labels, traditional labels. These labels correspond to the labels of the service and the pod. So here it's really like the traditional way of doing routing in Istio. So we created all these complex rules just by doing this, creating this traffic policy. That's simple, like just expressing what you want to do in one object, and everything is done for you by the Service Mesh hub. So we've been through this challenge today. We will cover the remaining ones in the next videos. We hope you enjoyed it. But before we wrap up, a quick review of our portfolio. So we have this Service Mesh hub that allows you to manage multiple machines in a simpler way. We have our API gateway that's called Glue, that is also envoy based, and that can also be used instead of the Istio Ingress gateway, but can be used when you don't have a service mesh and you just want to have to secure the edge. We also invest a lot in the WebAssembly. We know it's the future of Envoy, to be able to allow people to create their filters easily. We have this WebAssembly project, and we also have like the developer portal that is available for both environments where you have service mesh or when you don't have a service mesh, if you want to simplify the way your users interact with your APIs, doing rate limiting and plans and things like that. So we hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the next video.